I'm Serenity. Standing in the bustling hotel lobby, I watched as the man who had once been my world was being handcuffed by the police. His face was a mix of shock and disbelief as Detective Diaz read him his rights. Mr. Grayson, you're under arrest for forgery, fraud, and grand theft. His eyes found mine, filled with a mix of anger and betrayal, as if I was the one in the wrong. It all started a few weeks ago when I was sitting by my mother's bedside in the hospice. She had always been a strong woman, but cancer had taken its toll on her frail body. The soft beeping of the monitors and the rhythmic rise and fall of her chest were the only sounds in the room. I had been there for 3 long weeks, ever since the doctors had given her the news that there was nothing more they could do. My phone buzzed in my pocket, the persistent vibration interrupting my thoughts. I almost ignored it, but something told me I should check. I pulled out my phone and read the text message from my husband, Ethan. Serenity, I need a fresh start. I sold the house and took my share. The papers are filed. I'm moving to Bali with Ava. Don't try to contact me. I read it over and over again, hoping that the words would change, but they remained the same. Ava. His 28-year-old personal trainer. The one he swore was just a friend helping him get back into shape after a rough year at work. The one whose Instagram posts he liked at all hours of the night when he thought I was asleep. My mother's eyes fluttered open, and she looked at me with that same wise gaze she had always had. What's wrong, dear? She asked. I forced a smile and squeezed her hand. Just work stuff, Mom, I lied. She studied my face, and I knew she could see through my lie. Man problems? She said, her voice weak but still full of concern. I let out a bitter laugh. When is it not? I replied. That husband of yours. He always seemed a bit too full of himself. Not enough substance. If only she knew how right she was. But I didn't want to burden her with my marital problems in her final days. As I sat there in the darkness, my mind raced. Our house, the beautiful Victorian I had fallen in love with the moment I saw it. The one I had spent years renovating, adding my personal touch to every room. The garden where I had planted my grandmother's heirloom flowers. The kitchen where I had learned to cook my mother's favorite recipes. It was all gone, sold without my knowledge or consent. A little while later, my phone buzzed again. It was our real estate agent, Lily. Serenity, I'm so sorry. Ethan said you were on board with the quick sale. The buyers paid cash, and the closing was expedited. I tried to call you, but Ethan said you were unreachable because of your mother's condition. I stepped into the hallway to take the call. Lily, I never agreed to this sale. I haven't spoken to Ethan in weeks, I said, my voice steady but my heart pounding. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Oh my God, Serenity, but he had all the paperwork. Your signature. I felt a cold chill run down my spine. I never signed anything, I said, my voice rising in anger. Lily stumbled over her words. Serenity, I don't know what to say. The sale went through this morning. The new owners are moving in next week. I ended the call and leaned against the wall, my mind reeling. Forgery. He had forged my signature to sell our home. 3 days later, my mother passed away peacefully in her sleep. I held her hand as she took her last breath, whispering words of love and comfort. The funeral was small, as my mother had outlived most of her friends, but it was beautiful. I buried her next to my father under the old oak tree in the cemetery, the place she had always loved. Ethan didn't come. He didn't send flowers or even a text message to offer his condolences. The day after the funeral, I returned to work at Pacific Premier Bank. I had worked my way up from a teller to the regional vice president over the years, and most people didn't know that I was also the majority shareholder and the chair of the board. I had kept that fact quiet because I didn't want people to treat me differently. My assistant, Ryan, knocked on my door and entered, his face full of worry. Ms. Thompson, there's an issue with a large check that's been attempted for deposit. I set down my coffee and looked at him. How large? I asked. $850,000, he replied. I leaned back in my chair, intrigued. That's well above the standard flagging threshold. What's the problem? Ryan explained, the check is made out to Ethan Thompson, drawn on a real estate escrow account. But when we ran verification, your name came up as a required co-signer for any property transactions. And the signature on file doesn't match our records. A cold smile spread across my face. Bring me the file, Ryan. And ask Andrew from legal to join us. Also, have him bring Detective Diaz from the fraud unit. Within an hour, I had all the details laid out on my desk. The forged deed transfer, the falsified power of attorney, and my clearly forged signature on more than a dozen documents. Ethan had been careful, but not careful enough. He had forgotten about the strict verification protocols I had implemented at the bank after we had been targeted by a fraud ring a few years ago. Andrew whistled. This is extensive. He didn't just forge your signature on the sale documents. He created a whole false story about you liquidating assets to pay for your mother's medical bills. I rolled my eyes. Medical bills that were fully covered by her insurance. Bills he would have known about if he had bothered to ask. Detective Diaz, a sharp-looking woman in her 50s, examined the documents. This is clearly criminal forgery, fraud, and theft. With the amount involved, he's looking at significant jail time. Do you want to press charges? I thought for a moment, then nodded. Yes. But first, I want to know where he is. It didn't take long to find out. Ethan, in his arrogance, was staying at a luxury hotel downtown while Ava sorted out their Bali visa. He had deposited the check that morning and was probably already planning his new life. Freeze the account, I told Ryan. Flag it for criminal investigation. Already done, ma'am, he replied. I stood up and smoothed my black suit. I was still in mourning, but there was a newfound determination in me. Now, Detective Diaz, I believe you have an arrest to make. And if you don't mind, I'd like to be there. When we arrived at the hotel, the lobby was crowded. Detective Diaz had called for backup, and 2 uniformed officers flanked her as we approached the front desk. I hung back, watching and waiting. Ethan emerged from the elevator, looking tanned and relaxed, wearing a new Rolex that I was sure I hadn't bought him. He was scrolling through his phone, probably checking his bank balance, when he saw us. His face turned from confident to pale in an instant. Mr. Thompson, Detective Diaz stepped forward. You're under arrest for forgery, fraud, and grand theft. This is crazy. He shouted. Then he saw me, and his eyes widened. Serenity, what is this? Tell them this is a mistake. I walked towards him slowly. The only mistake was mine, Ethan. 15 years ago when I said I do. You can't just sell our house. It was half mine. He stared at me, his eyes desperate. It was a joint property. Actually, I said calmly, it wasn't. I bought that house before we got married. My name was on the deed. I added you out of love, but you had no right to sell it without my consent, which you forged on camera at the title company. His mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. But you can't do this. We're married. I continued, relishing every word. The bank where you tried to deposit that check? I own it. Every transaction over $50,000 gets flagged for review. Your forged documents were caught within hours. His eyes were filled with shock. You own what? Pacific Premier Bank. Controlling interest. 22 years of hard work, smart investments, and something you've never had, integrity. I turned to Detective Diaz. He's all yours. As they cuffed him, Ethan started shouting. Serenity, what about Ava? What about our plans in Bali? I shrugged. I suppose you'll have to call her from jail. And I'm sure a personal trainer half your age will lose interest when the money dries up. The last I saw of Ethan, he was being led to a police car, still protesting his innocence. I stood in the hotel lobby for a long time, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. Not just the weight of betrayal, but the weight of years of carrying a relationship that was never going to work. My phone buzzed. It was Lily. Serenity, I have amazing news. The buyers want to back out. They heard about the investigation. You can have your house back. The sale can be reversed. Thank you, Lily. Please start the paperwork, I replied. I walked out of the hotel into the bright afternoon sun. I knew that somewhere, my mother was smiling. She had always known that Ethan wasn't the right man for me. It just took me 15 years and a forged signature to realize it. When I returned to the house, it felt different. It was emptier, yes, because Ethan had taken some furniture, but there was also a sense of cleanliness, like opening the windows after a long, stuffy winter. I walked through each room, reclaiming my space. In what had been his office, I found papers he had left behind. Plans for Bali, pictures of Ava, and bank statements showing money he had siphoned from our joint accounts over the past few months. I lit a fire in the fireplace and threw them in, one by one, watching as the flames consumed them. 2 weeks later, I was back at work when Ryan knocked on my door again. There's an Ava here to see you. She says it's urgent. I almost refused, but then curiosity got the better of me. Send her in. Ava walked in, looking like a shell of herself. She was 28, but she looked much younger, with a desperate look in her eyes as if all her dreams had just crashed down. Ms. Thompson, she started, then stopped. I didn't know about any of this. The forgery, the house. Ethan told me you were separated, that the divorce was almost final. I looked at her, skeptical. And you believed him? She sat down in the chair across from my desk. He showed me papers. Separation agreements. He said you were getting half of everything and alimony. He said we were starting a new life. She laughed bitterly. I quit my job. I gave up my apartment. I have nothing now. I studied her for a moment. She was young and naive, but not malicious. Just another victim of Ethan's lies. What did he promise you in Bali? I asked. Her eyes filled with tears. A beach house. A fitness studio of my own. Maybe kids someday. She wiped her face. I know I was stupid. I know I shouldn't have gotten involved with a married man. I believed him. We all did once, at some point. I opened my drawer and took out a business card. This is a friend of mine. She runs a wellness center downtown. They're looking for personal trainers. Tell her I sent you. Ava stared at the card, then at me. Why would you help me? Because Ethan has hurt enough people. Your life doesn't have to be ruined. But Ava, I said, waiting for her to meet my eyes, learn from this. When a man betrays one woman for you, he'll betray you for someone else. Always. She left, clutching the card tightly. I never saw her again, but I later heard that she got the job and was trying to rebuild her life. As for Ethan, he took a plea deal. 3 years in minimum security prison, 5 years of probation, and full restitution. There wasn't much money left after paying for legal fees. The divorce was finalized while he was in prison, and I got everything. It wasn't much, just a lot of debt and broken promises, but I had my house, my garden, my career, and my integrity. 6 months later, I was promoted to bank president. The board unanimously approved, citing my handling of the fraud case as evidence of my leadership. I celebrated with a glass of champagne in my mother's flower garden, alone but not lonely. Sometimes, I think about Ethan in his cell, wondering if he ever understood what he lost. Not just the house, the money, or his freedom, but a woman who would have stood by him through anything honest. But he chose the easy way out, the lie, thinking he was too smart to get caught. My mother was right. Ethan had always been too flashy, not enough substance. And me? I'm doing just fine. The house is mine, every brick and board. The bank is thriving under my leadership. And on quiet evenings, I sit in my garden among my grandmother's flowers, reading my mother's old recipes, and thanking the universe for showing me the truth about Ethan. He thought he was taking my home, but instead, he gave me my life back. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's simply living well, surrounded by the things that truly matter, while those who wronged you face the consequences of their own choices.